Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Spotlight Series training. Today we're going to be focusing on record management with LinkPoint Connect. My name is Jill McConaughey, and I'm LinkPoint 360's Director of Marketing and Client Relations. I also have our Professional Services Manager, Jana Vovchik, on the line with me today to help with your questions. And before we get started, I want to review a few quick items. All attendees are muted and placed in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. But if you have questions for us today, we definitely want to help answer those. So feel free to type them up and send them to us in the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel. We are going to start with a full review of creating, editing, and managing Salesforce records with our software. So I do encourage you to wait a little bit and see if we do happen to address your question before we open it up to the Q&A at the end of the session. We are also recording this training, so we'll send a copy out to everybody once we have that available. Another housekeeping item that I want to touch on today before we get started has to do with upgrades. We're going to be working with the most current version of LinkPoint Connect for PC desktop installation. You've probably heard us calling this our enhanced side panel or version 7 by now, and many of you are already up and running with the new version, which is great because you're all set for this training. If you are a current customer and you're not upgraded yet, or what you see on my screen once we jump in doesn't match what you see, you can email customer success at linkpoint360.com and we can help get a status on the rollout for you. Note that if you have auto updates disabled or a custom setup for your particular deployment of our software, you will not have received the update automatically. That's just to preserve your custom configuration. But we're certainly happy to help you test the new version in your environment and help you upgrade when and if you are ready. And as always, upgrades are provided at no additional cost. So if it's something you want to explore, we're more than happy to explore it with you. So as I mentioned, we are going to focus today on working with Salesforce records inside of Outlook. And LinkPoint Connect does include a lot more functionality, and many of you are familiar with the email recording and maybe some of our sync capabilities. And we will be hosting separate spotlight sessions on those topics, and we also have videos that cover those topics. So today we're going to stay focused on record management, and specifically, we're going to be covering understanding SnapForms, which are what we use to actually access those Salesforce records, creating Salesforce contacts and leads, using LinkPoint connections for automatic contact management, using our drag and drop with email signatures, some of the duplicate checking and active update capabilities that are built into the software, creating standard and custom Salesforce records, and editing existing Salesforce records, all from Outlook. And we'll probably touch on at the end how you can configure some of this too. Okay, so let me just switch my screens around here and let's actually get started. We'll jump right into the training. As soon as I get PowerPoint out of the way. There we go. All right. So hopefully now you are seeing my Outlook and not my PowerPoint. And we're going to go ahead and start here in the inbox just as a good baseline for working with this. Now, LinkPoint Connect functions as your window to Salesforce. And the side panel, which you see on the right side of my screen, is that actual window to your CRM data. The side panel allows users to not just view, but also create and edit Salesforce data without you having to actually go to the CRM or open your browser. Everything that we're going to show here today is going to mirror each specific user's level of permission and access in Salesforce. So you can't get to or create anything that you can't already get to or create when you're actually working in Salesforce. And to avoid the time spent searching or trying to find Salesforce items, our side panel does a background search for you of Salesforce every time you click on an email. So as you can see here on my screen, I'm on an email from Fred, and it's a little tiny, but Jake also happens to be on here. I think he's up here in the recipients there. And the side panel, because it's email address centric, is checking Salesforce behind the scenes for all matching and related records in Salesforce based on that email address. So what you're seeing here at the top with Fred and Jake, hopefully you can see this, that's based on the email addresses that we're working with on the email. You can always click this little icon here, the little tiny orange one, on any record to expand the record details, view more of that Salesforce information, confirm which record you're actually working with before you either record or you decide to create a record. So you can see here on the record details pane, I'm pulling in additional information about Fred and some of that related information from Salesforce, just like if I was looking at his record inside of the CRM. Let's back out of this and let's talk for a minute now about what to do if someone's not in Salesforce. So we'll switch emails, and you can see because I switched emails, the side panel is automatically refreshing. That refresh includes that query looking for the email address. And you can see on my side panel, it now looks a bit different. We're not presenting any Salesforce information. The side panel did its check and it didn't find a match for this Michael James fellow in Salesforce itself. So instead, it's presenting us with a couple of different ways that we can work with that information. And this comes down to the first big area of today's training, and that's about lead and contact creation. LinkPoint Connect includes several different ways to create brand new records in Salesforce without going to the CRM. And the first one we're going to touch on that you're seeing here in my side panel is our LinkPoint Connections feature. And this is the newest way that we've built for you to be able to manage your contacts and leads, really just your personal database of who you're interacting with on a business or even a personal level. LinkPoint Connections keeps track of all of the new people that you're coming into contact with via Outlook. And it's designed to make it easy for you to choose when and where you want to update them, work with them, create them, or ignore them, if the case may be. So when you're on an email, connections will always be contextual. So email, just Michael James, and my demo user here today is Sally. So connections is seeing there's no Michael James. And the next thing it's going to do is it's going to collect as much information as it can about this person based off of the content in the email. So you can see the email signature has sort of been picked up and brought over into the side panel. The next thing you can do is you choose how you want to act on this. And you have 4 orange buttons here at the bottom of this record. You can create a Salesforce contact, a Salesforce lead, an Outlook contact, or if you don't need to work with Michael James in a business context or for whatever reason, you can click this X and you can actually remove him from the connections panel and sort of clean up your contacts as you go. Let's start by creating a contact just so you see what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and click the button, and what you're seeing here is a SnapForm. Now, SnapForms dynamically mirror the fields and the access and the requirements that you have in Salesforce for each object. So when you see a SnapForm, it's going to show the exact same fields that you would see if you were creating a new record inside of Salesforce. So your fields will probably look different than mine or Sally's here because it's looking at Salesforce and presenting specific information. As a reminder, all required fields are still necessary when you're working with a SnapForm. So you see I have a couple here that have a little mark in red on them. I can't submit this record until I actually make sure that those are taken care of. The great thing about the connections feature is that you can see here 90% of what I have has already been pre-populated into the form. So you see I have his name filled out, I have the email address, and everything has been pre-populated into fields as best as our software can predict on where we would expect you to want to put that information. This list here on the left is going to show a listing of every single value from that email signature, and the check means we found a home for it inside of that SnapForm. Now, for some reason, it wasn't able to map vice president in, so if I click and hold, I can actually drag this value to the field I want, so I still don't really have to type. So I'm just going to click on that. There we go. and I've kind of plopped it right into that title field there. You can drag between fields, you can move things around if somehow something didn't match up quite right, maybe if you have multiple email fields and you need to adjust it. But with a click or two, and essentially no typing unless your required fields require it, I have now populated a brand new contact form and can just click this green check mark. Now I'm not going to do that because I want to demo a little bit more with this, but once you click this green check, it's going to immediately create that record for you in Salesforce. Okay. I'm not going to save that, and let's just show you what the lead form looks like just to give you a sense of it. So again, very similar experience. We have all of our lead fields. We've been able to pre-populate that information. We still have our required fields. I'll just scroll down so you can see it's pulling in every field that I would have in Salesforce if I was creating a brand new lead. And again, yours will probably look different than mine. Okay, we'll close this. We'll go over here and let's take a look at the Outlook contact. So we do have situations where we've had customers ask about creating a local copy of a contact or a lead. You can click this third icon and it will actually launch the contact screen from Outlook. And you can see again here, we're pre-populating as many fields as we can. So you have the option to edit this as you need and click save if you're working with your Outlook contacts or want this particular one to maybe push up to your phone or so forth. Okay, save and close would actually save that to Outlook. We're just going to skip that step. Okay. Now, like I said, Connections is going to first and foremost give you a contextual view. So the email from Michael, where Michael is not a match, is going to just show me Michael. Now, what I think is really helpful about Connections is that when you have more data than I do in my test environment and you're emailing dozens of people an hour, a day, whatever your workflow is, you're going to have more connections than Sally has here. So if you want to see a collected view of all of your connections that are not matches against Salesforce, you'll just go to the bottom of your side panel. And in the bottom in the middle, there's this little sort of circle icon here. Okay, I'm underneath of the big orange button. And when I click on that, it's going to pop out a list of all of the connections that we have not found a match for in Salesforce. So again, if you're doing a lot of prospecting or have a lot of inbound work going on, you probably have a lot longer list than I do here, but you can choose to very quickly act on each one in this list with those same icons. So you can dismiss Joe Burns if you don't need him, but you can very quickly add Michael James and so forth. Okay. Close this. So that's our connections feature. Now we're going to stay on Michael James because I want to show you another way that you can create records, and that's with our drag and drop of the email signatures. So drag and drop and connections have some overlapping functionality. I think drag and drop can be really great if you've disregarded Michael James and maybe this was just blank here and there were no matches and you've changed your mind. There's also a dupe checker that I'm going to show you in a minute. So drag and drop certainly still has its place here. How does it work? Super simple. You highlight the email signature. So I've gone ahead and done that. I'm going to take my left mouse button, click down, and hold. Okay. Then I'm going to drag. So I'm literally trying to move this, and I'm aiming for the bottom left corner of my side panel where it says drop zone. And when I hover over it, we should see it turn orange. There we go. And when I let go, I'm being presented with the same options to create records. And you can see I also have an option here to create an account. So if you're allowed to do that, you could choose that as well. We'll go ahead and we'll click contact. And you're going to see that we're going to pre-populate that exact same snap form with the exact same information. So it's just a workflow preference or workflow need, whether or not you're going to go with the connections option or just use the drag and drop to create. It's a similar experience, but they each have their place depending on what you're trying to achieve. And I'm not going to save that, but you could have certainly done so. Let's switch back to someone who is in Salesforce. Now, we know Fred's in Salesforce, mainly because we're seeing him here in the side panel, and that means we can record emails to him, we can create all sorts of follow-up tasks and do great things with him. But let's say I didn't have my panel open, maybe I have it collapsed, or I didn't happen to look, and I want to try to create Fred. Highlight, drag and drop, click Contact. And instead of just immediately creating a brand new Fred, you're seeing our active update screen. So what this is doing is it's saying, before you create a duplicate, are you sure that you want to create a duplicate? And you do have that option. So we could click here to create a brand new contact, maybe based on your workflow or whatever your requirements are working with accounts, you do need another instance. If not, you can click on the record that we did find a match for, and you can see down in the bottom, the field difference is updated and changed. So it's actually telling you not only does Fred already exist, but here's what's changed in his contact information between whatever's in Salesforce now and whatever was in the signature that you just did the drag and drop on. So in this case, it looks like there's a phone number change, there's a street address change, somehow or another, there's something going on with the company. So we can choose to work with these changes. You can choose to not accept a change and uncheck it here. Okay. And when this looks kind of how you want, click your green check. And we're going to show you one last time the SnapForm with those changes. So you still have a chance to triple check before you write anything to Salesforce. So you can see on the left, these are the values we found that were different. You can choose how you need to make those updates, and then you can click your green check mark here in the top to make sure that those changes happen in real time. So that's our active update dupe checker, and I think that that can be pretty helpful. If nothing else, I like it because I can just very quickly double check if anything's changed about a person's information without having to go field by field and actually look for that. All right, so far we've looked at mostly contacts and leads, and they typically tend to be the core of how people work with Salesforce records as it relates to Outlook. But you can actually work with any object, standard or custom, that you have access to in Salesforce with our software. And you can launch any SnapForm from a number of spots in the side panel. So we're going to kind of go up a level and just talk about creating and editing in general. So what we do is, first place you can do this, you're looking for our little form icon. It looks like a piece of paper with a pencil. And the first one I see is in my top right corner. I'm going to go ahead and click that. So this is going to identify all of the standard and custom objects that I have access to out of the box. And it's a combination of what I have access to, what I use frequently, so that you have the things for your workflow at your fingertips. So when I click on this, I can get the list of all available object types, and I can go ahead and pick something to create. So let's start with account. So again, because we're creating new, I'm seeing all of the fields that I would see if I were creating a new account in Salesforce. Now I started with account because I want to show you if you have record types enabled for certain objects, we do support those. So here I have a drop down because we actually have multiple record types for accounts in my test scenario here. So you can actually pick between these, toggle, and the fields will adjust according to the record type that you have selected. So on any of those objects, just keep an eye out for record type up here at the top. Okay. The second thing, again, I have all the fields that I would have had access to if I were doing this directly in Salesforce. So again, all required fields are still required, but you have access to it pretty easily from Outlook where you're spending all of your time. Just to show you how they work, we'll just pick task just so you can see. This one will make a little bit bigger. I don't know why I left that small. So again, as you can see here, I like to show task because in my setup, I have a lot of required fields, so they will vary depending on what your requirements are. But you can very easily come in, create a task, click the green check mark. Every time you do that, it's an instant create in Salesforce. Now you can also create new from any other record to create something contextual. And so what does that mean? Well, everything I showed you in this menu is a brand new SnapForm with nothing filled in, which can be great. Those certainly have a place, but maybe I'm working with Fred and I need to create a follow-up task. So on Fred's little snapshot here, I have another one of those form icons with the pencil. So it's my second one here on the row. So if I click that, I'm going to get a shorter list of SnapForms that are contextual and can be related to the record I'm on. So these are the options I have to create records related to a contact. So if we click on task again, same SnapForm, but it looks a little different. So first, Fred has been populated in this related to field because we did this from his record. The second thing we're doing here, we're populating some of the information. So I have subject filled in, I have the description, and we're doing that from the email that's in Outlook to try to simplify the task creation process. You still have your required fields, so there are some things that you still have to do, but when you're working contextually, it does a little bit more of the heavy lifting for you. Again, update everything you need, click that green check mark, and it'll update that for you in Salesforce. Creates, let's expand this, are available anywhere you would have access for that. So you can see on an account, I have those contextual options here. The list is a little bit different because the list is a little bit different compared to my Salesforce. SnapForms are also really useful for updating. So far, for the most part, we've just talked about record creation. But from a record management standpoint, we can also talk about updates. And you saw the active update with the drag and drop, but I like the use cases of maybe working with opportunities and updating a stage, or if you need to make a tweak to a custom field on an account. And it's usually because someone emailed you and updated you with some information or a status changing, and you can make that change super fast. Anywhere you mouse over a record, and you see this first line here, this pencil all by itself, that's your edit option. So let's go ahead and pick an opportunity and click that. And that's going to launch a SnapForm. And it's all the existing data that I have in Salesforce, but now I can go ahead and I can change that stage. Maybe we're advancing forward, we're getting close to closing, and then as long as you have the permission to do so, you can click that green check mark and it's going to update. And if you saw, because it was super fast, that stage also refreshed in my side panel. So now not only did it update in Salesforce, but I'm viewing the exact information that I just made that edit on. So that just took one click, maybe 2 clicks, and it was super fast to make that update. Okay. I do want to mention, as I wind down with the list of topics I had planned, and then we'll take a look at your questions if anyone has any. The first thing is everything we're doing with this record maintenance and creation and update is all from Outlook in our side panel, but it's up to Salesforce. Okay. So if you are creating tasks or you do have an option to create events, so there's your calendar items. So if you're creating all of these from our software, they're all going up to Salesforce, which is great for reporting and trackbacks and everything. But if you want them local to you in Outlook, for calendars, contacts, and tasks, you may want to explore some of our sync features. I will do a 2-second high-level talk about that because sync can get a bit in depth, but our sync settings are one of the only things not inside your side panel. So you're going to have to locate the LinkPoint icon, likely near or in your taskbar, and we're going to right-click and I'm going to click Configure. Okay, and that's going to, that's in the top corner. That's going to launch the LinkPoint Assist box, and your sync tab here is going to control all of your sync settings. So just that you have an awareness of it, we do support independent sync rules for calendars, contacts, and tasks. So you can set that to be bidirectional. You can set them to go one way or the other way. You can control making sure things don't get deleted from one system or the other, making one system the master or the other. And the sync can be either manual or automatic. And there are a lot of different contingent settings in here. We'll just switch to show you this screen. If you're interested in syncing, I recommend that you check out our help documentation or you reach out to our support team. The sync works really, really great, and there is no undo button. So if you start syncing all your information and it's not doing exactly what you expected, there might be a setting that's off. So we want to make sure that you feel comfortable going into that experience with the correct settings. Just come out of this for a second. And lastly, on my list, before we start looking through the questions, I want to talk about removing items, okay? So your preferences pane in your side panel, you can launch that in their bottom right-hand corner. There's this little toggle icon. And the preferences pane is sort of 99% minus your sync settings, all of your configuration preferences. The first few have a lot of search and email recording settings inside of them, but what you're going to see here is a listing underneath of that of all the different objects I have to work with. And we've seen this list. We've seen it when we've created brand new with SnapForms. We've seen it contextually when we're editing. So if there's something you have access to in Salesforce and for whatever reason, maybe you want to clear up your list a little, maybe yours is a lot longer than mine. If you don't want to work with it, you can just uncheck this checkbox here so that we won't present that information for you anymore. Okay, so that's one good thing just to keep in mind. You can adjust which objects are displayed for you to work with and which ones you're searching on. Another place that you can make that alteration is if you look at each of these headers. So I have the contact group, I have the account group here. Let's scroll down. Let's play with cases. If I right-click a header, I get some really helpful options, and some of them help me sort the information displayed in the side panel. Some help me arrange that information so it's easier for me to navigate. But if you don't want to work with that object type anymore, you can choose the option here that says I don't work with. In this instance, it says cases. Okay, so you would just click that and you have that option to exclude the object from appearing in your side panel. Okay, and that can be helpful again just to sort of clean things up a bit if your side panel feels a little more cluttered and your objects aren't as tidy as what I have in my test environment. Okay, that covers everything I had prepared to show you today. I am going to give everyone a minute and just see if any more questions come through, and we'll go through that. So if you want to see something again, if you have a nuanced question about your use case, we're certainly happy to look at that with you. It's the other reason that I have Yana on the line with me in case there's something that's a little bit more complex. So just give me a second and I'll go ahead and look at the questions list and see what we have. Okay, so Tony, I do see your question about email recording and replying. We're going to go ahead and take that offline, but I want you to know I saw that because I want Yana to check that out separately, and I want to kind of stick to the record management, but we'll definitely get that sorted out for you. Let's see, the next one is, okay, so Janet, when you create a lead, I assume that the contact record is created at the same time. Maybe Yana can clarify more if I'm not understanding, but leads and contacts are typically very separate. So Yana, I don't know if you're aware of any, if you create a lead, you can create a contact record simultaneously.
It usually is one or another. Or if you need to create a lead You create a lead first, and then if you need to create a contact, you create a contact separately. They're not connected to each other.
Right, okay. So Janet, if you have another use case for that, feel free to keep typing away. I'll keep an eye on the box here. If there's some a little more context maybe around it where we can help you with that. Okay. The next question, how do you turn on connections? Jana, I believe connections in the new version is on by default. Is there a setting where maybe it could have been shut off for anybody on the new version?
No, it's on by default, I think.
Okay. And Ken, just make sure your side panel looks and feels and has the colors like mine. If you're using the classic version of our software, connections is not included. It was an upgrade when we did the full redesign and relaunch. So if you're not seeing it at all, just make sure that we have you on the right version here. Yes, version 7.2, Ken. So if you don't see kind of what I see, we'll go ahead and make sure that you have the right upgraded version of this, okay? The next question, is there a way to create a task after you send an email? You can do that a couple of different ways, Luke. It sort of just depends on where you're trying to do it from and how. We didn't focus on email recording today. I can show you that SnapForm very briefly. This email here is not recorded, so I'll go ahead and I'll record it. It looks exactly the same as if I was sending this. I would just be in an outbound email, exact same side panel, okay? And then before I send or after I send, you should have this option here. It's a little clock icon, and that's going to let you create, there you go, there's your SnapForm again. It's going to let you create a task as part of that workflow. So that's one place, and I sort of skipped over it because it's tied into email recording and we weren't super focusing on that today, but that's one place that you can do that. Okay. Of course, the other place is at any time you can come in and either create your task from scratch here in your create new list, or contextually from any record where you have access to add a task back up, okay? The next question, how do you remove a duplicate contact? I believe that's a Salesforce question. Jana, I know if there are duplicates, I'm pretty sure you'd see them here in the side panel, and then is it up to the user to just work with it within Salesforce?
Correct. Since the panel is only used for display, we don't do any data management within the panel.
It should be pretty easy. I think if you're trying to find the quickest way to remove a duplicate, you would probably need to go right to Salesforce. So anywhere you see this little box icon with the arrow, that's going to take you up and out and into your web browser, and then you'll land on a version of Fred. Obviously, triple check that's the Fred that you want to dedupe or delete before you do it, but that's all within the Salesforce confines. It's not a LinkPoint thing. Okay. Let's see. Hi, Patrick. Jana, do you know if we can use V-cards to create contacts? I know I'm showing email signatures, but do we work with V-cards?
We do. It works similar to email signatures. Instead of the signature, you would drag and drop a V-card. Or you can play around with different views in contacts. So Jill, if you go to contacts and there's a business card, there's just the V card view, so you can play around. You can see that. If you go back to home, you'll see it. You see where it says current view. You are on the list. Yes, if you select business card or just the card, that would be the V card. And you can just drag that over and drag and drop to create a contact. So you can play around with it and see which one works better for you.
There you go. I've never done that before, but it was really easy. See, we can learn on the fly, everyone. So all I did was click and hold and drag and drop, and it worked exactly like Yana said it would with everything pre-configured. So hopefully, Patrick, that
Yep.
answers your question, and we both learned something, which is really neat. All right, let's see the next question. There's a bunch of comments, so everyone give me a second to kind of go through this. Yana, do you know if we have anything specific? I'm less familiar with notes within Salesforce. Is there anything specific, or would anyone see how to create or add or update notes from our panel depending on how they're set up?
There might be an option to, but with Lightning, not sure if we support the new Lightning notes. We used to work with the standard classic notes, so we might double check that.
Okay. So Luke, if that's something that you're currently using on our classic version, or you want us to explore more with you, the email address, again, if I'm kind of saying we'll talk later, just email customer success, all one word, at linkpoint360.com, and we can take a look at that with you. Yana can take it offline and look at it related to your exact environment. Okay. Let's see. I am running version 7 with the enhanced side panel. Is there any version newer than that? My side panel is not showing the same icons as you in the upper right of the side panel. So the upper right, first, the upper right of the side panel, so we released our version 7 back in the fall of 19, and we've done a couple of smaller updates since then, but haven't overhauled anything, so the look and feel and core functionality has been the same. Our 7.2 release added more features, primarily around email recording. So Janet, you should see roughly the same thing you're seeing as me here. If there's something specific that looks like it might be missing, you can let me know. Again, your list of Salesforce objects will be different than mine because it's going to reflect whatever you have in Salesforce. So that's one thing. The other thing is that if you don't have, and I haven't talked about that today because it was sort of off topic, but if you don't have our LinkPoint tracker feature enabled, then you wouldn't see these little cute paw print track icons here. So it doesn't mean you don't have the right version. It's very flexible in the configuration and what we're displaying. Let's see. We have multiple Patricks. Patrick number 2, the version I have looks nothing like what you're showing. Customer service told me that I have the latest version. Okay, so Patrick number 2, we'll make a note. Go ahead and email customer success at linkpoint360.com. We can take a look. It might be that you're on the most up-to-date version. For your custom configuration or your specific, we are in rollout with the new version, so we can get that sorted out and make sure that if you have the classic and you want it to look like what you're roughly seeing here, we can get you set up with that. So no worries. Support doesn't manage the upgrades. That's more on the professional services side, so we probably just have to sort that out for you. Let me see. I think I've caught up with the questions. I'm just going to do another sweep, but if anyone has anything else they want to ask, you can go right ahead and throw that at me. Covered that. I think that looks like we've got everything. So I'll go ahead and start to wrap up just to be cognizant of everybody's time. So before we wrap up, I am going to flip back to PowerPoint because I do want to show you one last slide, which I think will be really helpful if you have more questions or if you're like me and you think of them after the fact. So we have a lot of resources around both the classic and the new versions of LinkPoint Connect. And the first place you can find helpful information or answer some of your questions is going to be our online knowledge base. So you can go there, you can see step-by-step instructions, screenshots, videos, really good one-stop shop for all of our resources. There are other customer trainings, so you can go to our news and events page I believe next week we're going to be talking in depth about configuration. So if you haven't signed up, I think those invites went out this morning. Feel free to go ahead and join us for that. We have also, I believe that page should have our video archive of more recent trainings. So if you missed our email recording training, you're going to want to make sure that you look for that on the news and events page. It'll be toward the bottom. We do have in-house support, so LinkPoint 360 support is available if you're running into any technical or configuration questions. And I know a few of you on the call today had some really great, unique questions surrounding your use cases or your setup. So that's our customer success team. So that bottom email, the one I keep repeating, that comes to me. So I'll make sure that we address your questions a little bit more in depth, and then we'll loop Yana and the professional services team in so we can help with best practices, address those upgrade concerns, or just sort of help to elaborate on everything more. All right. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us for the training, and I really hope that this session sheds some more light on how you can work more in depth with Salesforce without actually having to go into the browser. And of course, hopefully you can get more out of your LinkPoint Connect experience. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.